73% of Fortune 500 executives report that consensus building in their leadership teams actually delays critical decisions by an average of 4 weeks. 4 weeks. In markets where speed is survival, you're bleeding time chasing agreement nobody actually needs. Here's what happens in your boardroom. You present a strategic pivot. Smart people around the table. Everyone's invested in the outcome. So you ask for input. Then more input. You schedule another alignment meeting. You water down the original idea to make it palatable. You add contingencies. You loop in stakeholders who weren't in the room. By the time you have consensus, the market window has shifted. Your best people are exhausted from meetings. And the decision is so diluted, it can't drive any real change. You think consensus builds buy-in? It doesn't. Recent McKinsey research from 2025 shows that 78% of employees who were involved in consensus-driven decision processes reported lower confidence in the actual decision than those who experienced decisive leadership with clear rationale. You didn't build confidence. You built resentment. You created a culture where people optimize for being heard, not for winning. And here's the real damage. Your best operators start leaving. A 2025 Gartner study found that high-performing executives rated clarity and decisiveness in leadership as the top 3 factors in their decision to stay or leave an organization. Consensus looks collaborative. It feels inclusive. It looks good in your annual leadership message. But to your sharpest people, it reads as indecision. And nothing kills momentum faster. This video is not about becoming autocratic. It's not about ignoring input or running a dictatorship. It's about understanding the exact difference between consultation and consensus, and knowing when to use each one. We're going to walk through 3 leadership frameworks that eliminate the hidden cost of consensus, without sacrificing the intelligence that comes from collaborative thinking. By the end of this, you'll know how to make decisions faster without losing your team, how to create psychological safety around disagreement without needing universal agreement, and how to structure your leadership conversations so that dissent actually improves your decisions, instead of paralyzing them. This matters whether you're in Singapore, Sydney, Mumbai, or running a global operation. The leaders winning in 2026 are not the ones with the most meetings. They're the ones who know exactly when to decide and when to listen. The first framework is consultation without consensus. Let me be precise about what this means. Consensus means everyone agrees. Full stop. Consultation means you actively seek input from qualified voices. You genuinely consider their perspective. And you explicitly explain your reasoning when you make a decision that diverges from their recommendation. Those are not the same thing. Most leaders conflate them, and that's why they're trapped in endless alignment cycles. The evidence is compelling. According to a 2025 Harvard Business Review study of tech and financial services companies, teams led by executives who practice structured consultation outpaced consensus-driven teams on project delivery velocity by 34%. Those same teams reported equal or higher levels of psychological safety. The difference was that dissent was documented and acknowledged, not buried in a sea of competing preferences. Here's a real example. In 2025, a Singapore-based fintech CEO, Will Call Rajesh, restructured his product leadership meetings. Instead of asking his engineering lead, product lead, and commercial lead to find agreement on feature roadmap decisions, he changed the format. He asks each leader to present their analysis and recommendation. They discuss. Then Rajesh decides. When he decided to ship a feature that the product lead disagreed with, he spent 5 minutes explaining why. he said. I heard you. Your point about user onboarding complexity is valid. But the market signal on this particular feature is stronger than the onboarding risk. If I'm wrong, we iterate in 2 weeks. That's consultation. 4 months later. Usage proved Rajesh right. And his product lead told him that conversation actually increased her confidence in his judgment, not decreased it. The application is direct. In your next major decision, document who you consulted. Write down their input. Then write down your decision rationale, including points where you disagreed with advice you received. Share that one-page synthesis with your team before you move. That artifact, that explanation, is what transforms consultation into legitimate leadership, not just rubber stamping. The second framework is disagree and commit, but only when the conditions are right. Disagree and commit is a phrase you hear a lot, especially in tech. The idea is that you voice your disagreement, but once the decision is made, you execute with full energy. It's elegant. It's also impossible without the right cultural architecture. The research here is striking. A 2026 Deloitte study of high-performing technology and financial services organizations found that disagree and commit only works when 3 conditions are met. 1. There's explicit psychological safety around dissent during the discussion phase. 2. The decision maker actively solicits dissent and rewards people for raising genuine concerns. And 3. The decision is made by someone with real authority, not by consensus seeking. Without those 3 conditions, disagree and commit becomes a corporate theater piece. People pretend to commit while quietly undermining the decision. And that's exactly what kills execution. Let me give you an example from India. A Bangalore-based SaaS company's leadership team debated whether to enter the Southeast Asian market in 2025. The VP of sales pushed hard against expansion. She thought domestic growth was far from ceiling. The CEO heard her completely, but decided to launch in Southeast Asia anyway. What made this work was that the CEO had explicitly invited the dissent. She said, I need to hear the case against this. Priya, build it for me. Priya did. Then the CEO decided. Then here's the crucial part. When the VP had concerns about the Southeast Asia deployment, she voiced them directly to the CEO, not in parking lot conversations. Because the CEO had demonstrated she could separate the person from the idea. And that dissent improved her thinking. The application is about tone, not policy. Stop saying, I want everyone's input. Start saying, I need someone to argue against this idea. Who will take that role? Assign dissent. Make it a job. Then when someone disagrees, thank them specifically. Say, that point about timing. I hadn't considered that. That matters. The next time you need real dissent, you'll actually get it instead of a room full of people nodding. The third framework is decision authority clarity. This is less about psychology and more about structure. But it's where most consensus culture actually breaks down. The problem is ambiguity about who actually decides. You say, let's talk about this as a team. Your team interprets that as, everyone gets a vote. You interpret it as, I'm gathering information. That gap is where consensus seeking lives. According to 2025 research from the World Economic Forum on Organizational Agility in Asia Pacific markets, 68% of executives reported that lack of clarity about decision authority created duplicative meetings and extended decision cycles. 68%. In many Asian organizations with embedded hierarchical structures, This is particularly damaging because people assume they should consensus seek because they weren't explicitly told someone has authority. Here's the example. A Mumbai-based pharmaceutical company went through a 2025 restructure where they flattened 3 layers of management. Suddenly, there was chaos about who decided what. A product launch decision that should have taken 2 weeks took 14 weeks because 5 different people thought they needed to sign off. The CTO finally created a document, literally called Decision Authority Map, that said, CTO decides on technology architecture by X date. CMO decides on go-to-market by Y date. CFO decides on budget by Z date. Input from marketing, sales, and ops is required, but decision authority rests with the owner. That one document eliminated 2 months of duplicate meetings across the year. Your application is immediate. For your top 5 strategic decisions this year, write down who decides, by when, whose input is non-negotiable, whose input is optional but welcome. Share it before the meeting. If you do this, consensus culture evaporates because people know where they stand. They can focus on influencing the right person instead of trying to convince everyone. Now picture what your leadership culture looks like 6 months from now when you've embedded these 3 frameworks. Your Monday leadership meeting still happens. Your CTO still presents her architecture roadmap. Your VP of sales presents the competitive threat. But the energy is different. People know Rajesh decides. But they also know their voice shapes the decision. There's no performance of consensus. There's no exhausting quest for unanim. Thanks for listening. If you found this valuable, please subscribe to Apex Minds D4J for more powerful insights. See you in the next one.